So into the charts we go, and again, this video is for the weekend. I didn't feel the need to do any sort of video yesterday considering the lack of volatility. Here was yesterday's candle on Saturday. Here's today's candle on Sunday. So again, even today, very little price action. Now, the biggest thing that I'm kind of keeping an eye on is we got a pretty nasty red candle on Friday, and so far these are inside bars. Now, the reason why that's important is if we know our pattern formation, if you get a big down candle and you get this kind of sideways action in the lower portion of that down move, it's known as an in spirit of bear flag. Now, right now, we only have 2 candles there forming, which is what we would call an immature bear flag or in spirit of bear flag. So it doesn't really have a lot of weight yet. But if we were to go sideways for another couple days, the probabilities of a down move start to increase. So again, just something for us to kind of keep in mind here as we watch the price action over the next couple days into Monday and Tuesday of this week. Now, we are waiting for the S&P futures to open, oil to open, gold to open, all that stuff, the U.S. dollar, and that'll occur in about 50 minutes from the time I started this video. So that also could shape the price action in the crypto markets. Obviously, the crypto markets are influenced by which way the overall stock market goes. We saw that obviously on Friday. The stock market initially had a pretty big gap up, then actually sold off, kind of rallied back to the upside, but nonetheless was under a little bit of pressure, forcing us to the downside there. All right. Overall, not looking at a whole lot else with the Bitcoin chart there. We know our supports and resistance levels. Here we have the chart of Ethereum, and Ethereum, again, basically you have this channel. You could see the low end of the channel, the high end of the channel, all the way over here, the high end, and then the low end, the low end, and the low end over here. So it's been very clear that we're kind of hovering in this upsloping channel. And again, channels, the key about a channel is that the lines are parallel, right? So it gives you a basis of resistance and support. And the way I view channels is, number one, upsloping channels eventually break to the downside. Now, you could still stay in this channel for another month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 months, 12 months. Doesn't really matter. You don't necessarily know when it will break. But the point is that upsloping channels eventually break to the downside. So you just want to be aware of that, is that, again, that's the general outcome of a channel that is upsloping. Downsloping channels tend to eventually break to the upside. And again, that's just, again, probabilities. If you looked at 1,000 channels, you would find that 700, 800 of them ultimately break in the opposite direction. So upsloping channels break to the downside, downsloping channels break to the upside. So again, in the longer term, this would, if we hold this channel, eventually you break to the downside. And again, ultimately, you guys know me, I'm still in the camp that this is still a bear market rally. Now, if we go back to just talk about that aspect of it, I've said to you guys, and I've said this even on interviews, that the big level I'm watching is this area here. So we have the lows from the 2021 bull market on Bitcoin. And if you look at, here was consolidation and the breakdown. Now, we've now come full circle back to this period here and these lows. On a psychological basis, this area is a major pivot point. And what I mean by that is, as long as we're lower than this area, the general angle is to the downside, meaning pullbacks, drops, new lows, etc. If we really establish ourselves above this 30,500 level right up here, then all of a sudden it's almost like a scale, and the scale starts to tip to the upside. All right. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have pullbacks. You're absolutely going to have pullbacks. But again, at that stage, and I've said this many times over, if we were to stay above this upper trend line at around 30,500 or so, and we stayed above there for a week and we established ourselves above there, then you start talking about, okay, this turns out potentially to be the low on Bitcoin, at least per the probabilities, right? Everything we do is probability, or everything I do, I should say, is probability driven. And I think that's one of the key things is, there's so much hype. The crypto markets are one of the most emotional markets out there, and investors tend to get excited and FOMO in and also fear, right? Fear just takes over and they panic because generally the crypto markets are made up of a larger percentage of retail versus institutions, as if you were to look at and compare it to stocks or commodities. If you look at stocks, in general, more institutions and big money are trading stocks, more institutions, big money trading commodities. And not by numbers, I mean literally by dollars, right? So like if every day when you look at Apple stock or Microsoft, probably about 75, 80%, maybe even 85, 90% of the volume done per day on those stocks is institutional based. All right, because they have so much money, right? If you look at crypto, it's much different. There's a much higher percentage of money that is coming in from the retail crowd, the smaller investor, and therefore it's much more apt to be an emotional crowd, because the retail investor, again, is more emotional, right? If you're an institution and you're managing $1 trillion fund or $1 trillion pension fund, whatever it is, you don't really care if Apple goes up or down 5% that much. But to the retail crowd, especially if they're using leverage, that can be a major move. All right, so anyways, that's kind of where we are right there. So we know this level's the big one up here. I do have a little bit of a short out here at 28,450. That's right here in this range here. If we touch that 30,000 level, I'll short again and add to that position, DCAing in on that short side. If we come down to the 25,000 level, there is support there. There is a chance that I would take it off the table and then look to reload on the short on any sort of bounce. We should get a bounce off this level. Okay, let's go to a couple other coins out there. So let's kind of just go through the list here. Let's take a look at BNB. And again, BNB not doing a whole lot. We have this down-sloping trend line right here. That, again, from these pivots, touched it right there, then you broke up and consolidated before breaking up. So if we were to fall on BNB, it would be support right here. Resistance, this is a little bit of resistance, but the fact we just hit it, it's more this level up here. This would be the bigger level. These levels down here, honestly, at this stage, I can erase them. Now, this one should stay here. This area should definitely stay on the charts, right in this area. And then you have also this upsloping trend line. So this area would be a huge area of support. This will be first support, though, right there on the charts. Okay? Let's go next to Cardano. See what we got on Cardano. Cardano, again, a little bit of a pullback. Again, Cardano's had a great rally. Great rally on the daily chart. We've had a pop as high as 38, 39 cents off of the low of around 30 cents. So it's about a 30% rally, 33% rally off of this low. But again, notice the resistance right here, and price is pulling back just a little. There's a minor trend line of support, which has worked so far. Look at that, right? So if we connect this low with this low and this low and this low, that's your short-term level. If you break below that, so let's say we get below 35 cents, the likelihood increases quite a bit that we're then going to trade down to about 31.5 cents, which again would be this trend line right here. Do you guys see how that works? Pretty cool. So notice this line. Why is this line important? Well, you can see that the chart is telling us it's important because it's now hit. You started here, you hit it here, here, and here. So that's 3 additional or 4 total times it's hitting that line. So what that means is, just like a scale, right now you're on that line. Maybe you get a little bit of upside. That's fine. If you break the line, the scale then tips to a fall down to this level. Okay. By the way, please note that all of the action that we've seen lately has been inside of this downsloping channel. Now, remember what I said about upsloping channels. Upsloping channels tend to break to the downside. Downsloping channels eventually break to the upside. Now, that doesn't mean we buy Cardano here. It means in general that at some point, I mean, this could be 6 months, a year from now, who knows, if this breaks out, then you have a bigger move to the upside. Here would be next, and then you look at here and then here. But again, we don't know when that breakout will occur. For all we know, it goes down here first, which would be down to 15 cents. And that's why you really don't want to guess at when it's going to break out, because someone could guess and say, oh, well, this will break out soon, and then they end up getting it at 35 cents. It comes all the way down to the low end here at 16 or 15 cents, and they're down over 50% on their money. And that's usually where they get shaken out. They take a loss, and then it goes back up, and then it finally breaks out and makes a bigger move to the upside, right? So, again, this is why charts are so important for us to see, because it tells us our positive breakout scenario, and it also tells us that if this breaks this level and this level, you'll have support here, but then nothing until this lower level down here. All right. XRP had a big move last week. Since that big pop, it's kind of been chopping sideways here, still hovering around 44 cents or so. So again, just chopping sideways. We'll watch and see. Basically, one of the things, though, what type of channel is this? Down sloping. What did it do? It broke out, right? So again, and I didn't necessarily know it was going to break there, right? I mean, you don't necessarily know that, but the point is that's the angle that you usually see the breakout on. Now, one of the things to recognize that if you're someone who wants to trade Ripple, And again, please do it at your own risk, knowing that you're waiting on a judge's decision. But in reality, per the chart, if we trade back down to this trend line, that becomes a buying opportunity, right? That would be a retrace to the scene of the crime right in here. Okay, so just little tidbits on that chart and some good education today to go by. Let's look at Matic here. Let's see what we got on Matic. Matic, again, sideways chop, really not doing a whole lot. Support remains right down here. Resistance is right up here along with this double top. That, again, is your level there. If Matic breaks, and by the way, what type of channel is this? It's an upsloping channel. So if Matic breaks this area here, this low end, then you head here, eventually probably down to this area right here, and eventually down to here. So just some things to watch. And again, just to be clear, just because Matic is an upsloping trend line doesn't mean it's going out of business, right? I mean, that has no relevant factors to it. It just means that at some point, because this is an upsloping channel, this eventually price just keeps rising and rising. So even if it's in 2 years from now, this rising channel could be at $20, right? But eventually price can't keep going up and up and up, and it'll have a break point where it collapses down a little bit. So again, I think that's my point here. Same thing with a downsloping trend line, right? So if we go back to, I don't know, XRP, all right, so you have this downsloping trend line. Eventually, this downsloping trend line gets close to zero, right? So price inevitably probably can't keep going down and down, or at least usually it can, unless it's going out of business, which I don't think Ripple is. But eventually, it has to break out, and that's just the concept behind why downsloping channels eventually break to the upside, upsloping eventually break to the downside. Let's quickly look at Solana here and see what we got on Solana. Solana has this beautiful wedge pattern. The other thing on Solana that I would just like to point out as well is that you could make a case to me, and this is just doing it from my rough eye, but it looks to me like you almost could make a channel as well here, right? So if we look at this, from here you broke into the channel, kind of kissed the lower end, lower end, higher end. So again, downsloping channel has been reestablished. Interestingly enough, the only reason it broke below here was when FTX collapsed, and there was a lot of fear that Solana was going to collapse because FTX had to dump so much of the Solana, and that caused this kind of movement outside. You could argue that FTX never collapsed, that this actually would have stayed in here, right? Like this. And it probably would be about at the same price as it is now, right? I mean, that's what's amazing about it, is that, you know, you have these external kind of crazy scenarios where people just freak out and it caused it to go back. But notice how price eventually came back in that channel and is now back again in that channel. So just very cool stuff there. Avalanche hovering here. So Avalanche again chopping, support down here, resistance up here. Again, if we look at the larger time frame, you have a larger time frame here. If you can get above $22, that would give you a bigger breakout potentially up to this $30 level. Polkadot, let's take a look at DOT real quick, see what we got on this one. Yeah, nothing really new on DOT. You know, again, upsloping trend line here, flat trend line right here. Those are your two lines to kind of keep an eye on. You could make a case that you have a downsloping trend line here as well. Notice that one there, you kind of hammered against it in most of those last days until the last couple days right here. And so that would just give you a short-term kind of potential pop, maybe back to double top. But yeah, I don't see much on this Polkadot chart. Aside from that, again, Litecoin, nothing on the Litecoin chart as we kind of screen through a lot of these top ones. Litecoin, again, good bounce on Litecoin. Resistance right up here, support right down here. And let me see if there's anything else here. No, I don't see much else there. Tron, no, I don't see anything there. Chainlink, we could take a look at that. Haven't looked at that in a while. Chainlink, haven't even drawn these out. Keeping there we go. Bring that out there. That line's inconsequential. That line's inconsequential. This one is still consequential here. That would be resistance and support. Actually, you know, you can even add in a new line here. This would be support right down there on Chainlink. All right, I don't want to keep you guys or bore you guys. So bottom line, just again, as of now, the crypto markets are quiet. We are going to watch the futures open in the not-too-distant future. So that could give us a little gyration right now. Bitcoin trading at 27,818. Again, we are still holding close to this resistance. Maybe you still have a pop to 30.5. But, you know, again, to me, this is a level that the probabilities favor the short side, versus the long side. Now remember, probabilities don't guarantee a result. It just tells you what the most likely outcome is. So again, like I like to say, 70 to 80%. So that still leaves 20 to 30% chance it could break out. You have to just factor that into your risk assessment. That's exactly why I'm not going super heavy on the short side of Bitcoin or Ethereum, because you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that there's always that momentum, maybe the positive, maybe the banks continue to collapse and more money comes in here. There's some different scenarios where, again, you could potentially get some upside. All right. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. I will keep you posted on Monday. We should get some price action, maybe even some trading opportunities. I will keep you posted. Take care.